Hello everyone to this two-part series of unedited, not scripted videos where I go into more complex topics that would require a bit more time than usual to discuss. I'd rather do them in a more explanatory manner so that I can express them without the need of too much visual aid. Also because it would take me about 5 months with my slowness in editing to make this happen. So I hope you will enjoy this format. Tell me if you don't like it, but let's get straight into it. What we're going to talk about today is the first part of this list. We're going to talk about map management. Ideally, the entire point of this video is going to be about tipping the resource meter. If you do not know what that means, in very short words, it means that whenever you're playing this game, everything below a line is yours and everything above a line is theirs. Now I set like a default line, it can be a bit skewed or whatever. A very simple way to approach the game of Deadlock is to always think, okay, everything I'm doing, its purpose is to take stuff away from the enemy team that then they cannot regain back. And I can do this for enough times that they are unable to farm, they're behind in souls, they're behind in boons, and I can win against them because of more reasons than just good fighting or good positioning on the map or good ideas and -1s in fights. I can actually win just by having better resources. The main concept will be the lane splitting concept we're going to talk about later, which just describes where are we on the map and how do we position on the map. But all of the stuff I'm saying today is more scrim related than usual. So it's stuff that you will not necessarily see in a normal game, but as the game evolves, it will become a part of how you play, and you should always know that this is the underlying theory behind most decisions. Some people may disagree with me, some people may say that this is not the way you should look at Deadlock, but I've played like this multiple scrims, I've played multiple games with this in mind, and it always works out. You can analyze most pro games in this way and it still works out, so let's get into it. How do we tip the resource meter? Visually, it's very simple. If you're the team below, you just want to take stuff that's on the other side. Now, of course, this comes with a price. The cost of time to go maybe from here to here. It comes with the risk of them collapsing on you. It comes with the fact that maybe you go here, you take stuff and then they die, and then you die and you feed them their souls and space and whatever. Very simply put, you should always be looking to taking something away that should not be yours or something that is evenly spread between you two, such as mid buffs, the urn, mid buffs, etc. Whenever you make this happen, a little bit of your team gets closer to a power spike, gets closer to a good item, gets closer to something else. Now, I will not go into any of these specific details. So we're not going to go into what are power spikes. These are basic concepts. You need to play the game. No one can teach you too well about them. But of course, when you get more souls, the idea is that your character is going to be stronger. You're going to be able to take more aggressive fights up to a point where you are literally uncontestable on the map and your team becomes uncontestable on the map. And guess what? If you're uncontestable on the map, you get mid-boss, you run it down, you get the patron, and you win the game. And this is our goal today. Sadly, we will not be able to go deep into the concept of carries because they require an entire video. What you need to know, taking this information from a Zergy interview that was made when the game still had 4 lanes and buff enjoyers was still buff enjoyers before Virtus Pro, long time ago for people who are new to the game. Usually a carry has to optimize for resources, he has to optimize for souls because he's faster at getting souls than other people. And what happens with a carry is that his resource meter gets tipped just by existing on a lane alone. So a carry tips the resource meter by not being contested from the enemy because he's so fast at farming, then the enemy will always be behind him if they're not contesting him. That's all you need to know. We're going to progress in the rest of this video in a sort of an informative manner where I give you information with some ideas of mine, but you have to use this information in your personal way. Again, these are stuff that comes from scrims, so you can't necessarily apply it directly in pubs, you can't ask your teammates to understand what you're saying. You need to personally understand it and sometimes make calls that may win your game. Let's get into lane splits. Before getting into anything complex or weird, let's just start with the default 2-2-2 split that people call default split, even split, doesn't matter. The concept is basic. You have 2 people on each lane. The same way you spawn, you just keep it that way for the entirety of the game. Let's start by thinking about what is good and what is bad about this. The good is that whenever the enemies allocate someone to another lane, so they leave 1 person here and, for example, they put 3 here and they keep 2 here because, I don't know, they're fighting or whatever. 2 people, they can push, they can take the jungle, they can keep the resource meter by taking stuff from the enemies in a very simple manner. What is the constraint of this? Of course, your souls. If you're too poor and the enemy is too rich, they can keep a single person to fend off 2 people and you can't do anything about it because it's gonna survive for so long that those 3 people are gonna finish their job here, whether it's a tower, whether it's a walker, and are gonna go back here and kill you again. What else is good and what is bad about the 2-2-2? Well, in a 2-2-2 split, everyone is getting a decent amount of souls. If you get more than 2 people on the same lane, the souls you will get are less efficient than if you had a single or 2 people on that lane. Also, it's pretty standard to consider that 2 people is the right amount to farm the close jungle to your lane. So if the map is still up and there's no point in going anywhere else, just put 2-2-2 everywhere. Try to press people so they cannot split people away, and just farm their side and try to take away something from them. Now, what else is good about the 2-2-2? We talked about default scenarios where you're not interacting with the enemy team, they're interacting with you. Let's say that you are pushing an objective here. Or let's say that you find a kill in their jungle, in your jungle, it doesn't matter. You just find an elimination. Now the enemies, who may also have been playing a 2-2-2, are suddenly in a deficit. They have a 1-2-2. Of course, as I said before, with 2 people against a single person, you steal their stuff. You go for their jungle, you go for their objectives, and you make sure to retreat and not feed when someone is gonna respawn and they're gonna be on a 2-2-2 again, unless you're very high and rich in souls. This is a very simple concept, nothing crazy to explain here. You may sort of understand what I'm gonna go through with the rest of this. When is 2-2-2 pretty good and even? I already mentioned when you have resources on the map that you need to farm, and when you're on the same amount of souls as the enemies. Because if you're at the same number of souls, every time you don't perform a 2-2-2, or when you perform a 2-2-2, you make sure that someone is safe, you're gonna risk having the single person who remains on a lane get attacked from the enemy. So if you're not even in souls for any reason, or if you're not fast enough, the enemies can punish you with the same stuff I just said. You give 1 person to another lane, you're not fast enough to do stuff, they steal your resources. And that's the basic idea. Now, let's say that you have a carry in your team. You have a player who needs a solo lane, and he really wants you to get the fuck out of his single lane. He wants to get the troopers, he wants to get the jungle. Let's move to a 1-2-3 split. 1-2-3 splits, they can be 1-3-2, doesn't really matter. The concept is what we kind of mentioned before. You're gonna have 1 person on a solo lane, let's say 2 people on mid and 3 people on another lane. It can be like either or, right? Doesn't need to be, we don't care where they are. This is a split that you call when you know that your carry player is good enough to stay alive in lane first. So for example, a Wraith with TP, an Infernus with his dash and a debuff remover, or an Ivy that can instantaneously push wave and get out. And it's something that you may have to call when an objective is being contested. So as we said before, objectives on the map are your main goal to tip the resource meter. So if you have to focus on objectives, sometimes you need to prioritize a part of the map over something else. So let's say that the urn is on the right and you need to pick it up and they want to contest it and they have 2 players on each lane. Well, in that case, sure, they will aggress this guy who can just leave if he's good enough at the game. These guys are gonna relax and are just gonna fight in a default manner. But if 2 people are here, now you have the +1. And this +1 is gonna make you able to either take resources, again, something which you have to do even if you're above and you're like 3-4 people, doesn't matter, always look for the resources. It's gonna make you maybe able to get a kill, it's gonna make you able to get the urn and start walking towards the other side of the map. Another huge thing about 3-2-1, you have 3 people here, so 1 person can get the urn, you still have 2 people that can still pressure these guys to stay here. So the map is even, but you're doing an objective. which means that they do not necessarily want an even fight anymore. They will rotate someone over the urn, or they may rotate someone over the urn, which may free up resources on the map. Let me give you an example. These resources may be free because now you have 4 people on the right side who can take whatever they want. Or this Walker may be free because now you can rotate people from mid lane to side lane and push this Walker. Blue Walker is hard to get, especially early in the game, but it can also be an option. Something else that can happen, if you have a very good split and you're very fast and they're doing mid boss and they're staying on lanes in a separate manner, you can just go mid. You can just do damage to mid, make the mid boss make a sound, and boom, now you have people that have to defend the urn, but maybe they want to take the mid boss, it's more important to them. You get a free urn, you get a fight after the urn. I'm getting a bit complex here, I'm not following a straight line. I hope I'm not making it too difficult for you to understand. But going back to the simple explanation, whenever you have a 1-2-3 split, whenever you want to make a 1-2-3 split, your goal is to look for an objective that you can get to force the enemies to position themselves in a non-even manner, and then use your advantage in numbers to steal their resources or their camps, whether it's their camps or their objectives. So why am I telling you all of this stuff in this more complex and non-linear manner than usual? It's because these scenarios will happen by default. There's nothing you can do about it. You will find yourself in these splits consistently, and it's your job to always find a solution and an advantage from these scenarios. Sometimes you force them. For example, you start out in a 2-2-2 scenario by yourself. You decide, well, we need to take this tower. Let me go and rotate over here. When you're still 3 people and they do not react and there's still 2 in the enemy team, well, then your job is to take their jungle as well, and your job is to take the other tower as well. Or you're playing with a friend who is a carry and you want to leave him alone on his lane to farm. Now you force a 1-3-2, a 1-2-3 split in any way or form possible. Could you just go to the jungle and hide? Sure. But at the end of the day, if you're just going to their jungle to find a kill on blue, it just becomes a 1-3-2 split. Let's talk about the next scenario, and let's start introducing something that applies to uneven situations. So whenever you're behind in souls, getting enemy resources, of course, goes behind in what is your priority. There's a level of how behind in souls you can be with whatever you do. You can be a little bit behind, where every single even fight loses on your end because they have better boons, they have better items, or whatever. You can be a lot behind, where even when they have one single person dead, you're not able to do almost anything on the map. Now, what is the solution? Whenever you are in a situation where you desperately need to take resources, and that can also happen in another scenario which we're going to talk about later in, whenever you're in a situation where you desperately need to take resources, your job goes away from the initial idea of, let me put my focus on making my team efficient and seeing how much we can get up in souls. Your focus becomes, I need to create a scenario where we're always gonna win, or we're more likely to win the next resource push we do. This scenario usually comes from 2 different options. You either a lot of people, so you're like 4 versus 2, or you kill one of their enemies and then you create a situation where you're always more people than them. You have more cooldowns, then you have to fight well and win, whatever. That's the skill that's needed to win a game. So what is a 1-1-4 split? A 1-1-4 split is a split where usually you don't have a tower and the enemies may not have it, they may have it. You get 1 person to defend this tower, you get 1 person to push this lane, and then you allocate the entirety of your team, the rest of your team, on another lane to try and get resources. You may just decide, guys, we have to get their vending machines. Sure, let's get 4 people on green and let's push this. Or there may be a fight happening and the situation kind of inverses itself. So you're respawning, there's 4 people already here, the enemies are matching it with maybe 4 people or 3 people or whatever, and you do not want to lose resources while this fight happens. So what you do is you stabilize your 4 men with more people inside of the map. By putting 1 person here, 1 person here to fix the wave, 1 person to get the resources. The entire concept goes back to what we said before. You're trying to get an advantage. This advantage can come from not losing stuff, meaning you have to put people on waves, or by winning important fights that are happening. If you are respawning when a fight is happening, most of the times, especially in the early game before 20 minutes, your best bet is to just go to another lane and push the wave out so you don't lose too much stuff after that fight. And that creates the one scenario. If you start from a 2-2 situation instead, your best bet is to look at the map and decide where is the most amount of resources, or where are the resources that I want to steal the most. Perhaps it's the urn because it's your side. Perhaps it's their doubles and it's their single gambling machines. Perhaps it's a tower. You may just have to allocate more people than usual on a single lane. What is your ringing bell to do that? What gives you a good call to do that? Well, if you're behind, you surely do not want to get a 4v4 fight. You're gonna lose that. So your best bet whenever you are in a stalled situation is to force your waves still with a 2-2-2 or a 1-2 or a 1-3-2, whatever, like default even split on the map. Force a situation that requires the enemy to react after you've already left, such as pushing the wave to the walker, but they're not showing yet because they're in jungle. And while they're fixing, over-rotating people to the other lane. This will make it so that one person is still in their jungle, one person is fixing the wave, and one person is fixing the wave, and now it's a 4v3. And winning this 4v3 or just getting a kill out of this 4v3 will make every single thing you do for the respawn time, for the time of respawn, an advantage on the map. This advantage, try to guess, makes you able to get stuff. Camps, walkers, guardians, even camps, mid-bosses. So, to summarize it, a 1-1-4 split is an emergency split that still keeps stability on the map, that still implies that the people who are staying in the solo lanes are able to get value from that lanes, or that still implies that the walkers have value and your lanes and your resources have value. Now, you may have seen that we're getting in more of a complex situation as we speak. I'm sorry if that's happening. If you don't understand anything, just write a comment below. I already know I'm gonna have to type so much stuff in the comments, so go for it. Don't worry at all. You can also contact me on Discord if you need. I'm gonna leave my Discord below. Now, for the next part, let's say you're in a desperate situation. No jungle is on the map. Towers are down. And you may still have a walker. The enemies are so far ahead, let's say a plus 25% soul gap, which, to give you an idea, it means that if you are at 100 souls, they're at 125k. It means that every one of them almost has at least one 3k item above you. Some of them may have a 6k item above you. The situation is dire. Basically, whenever you make a split that does not keep someone on lane, you're hoping for the enemies to not understand that the split is being made. Let me go deeper with what I'm saying right now. The enemies almost never think that you're gonna leave a lane alone unless the lane is very shoved and it's showing that it's alone. So if you manage to push out a lane or show someone on lane and then force a very quick rotation anywhere else on the map with 5 people, and in some cases 6, but it's very rare because usually your carry needs to be on a lane farming alone at all times. Whenever this happens and you see 2 people reacting and only 2 people and you really need to win the next fight, then you may decide to call a 5 split. A 5 split is nothing else than just allocating the entirety of your team except a farming carry on a resource or on a person. This is a risky split. Why? Because if they can stall you with 2 or 3 people, or if they can kite you, the rest of their team can just push your objectives, they can take mid-boss, they can do whatever they want with the map. They can start a mid-boss and now you're forced to fight through a staircase, which is bad. They can take the urn and just make it happen because one of them takes the urn and you go to kill the other guy, and now you're 5 people here trying to push the walker. Well, you have to give up the urn because you only have 1 person on the rest of the map. So what I'm trying to convey with you is that every single split which doesn't optimize for resources and for lane pushing on the map and gives up something needs to be done fast and needs to be done with a goal in mind. So you're 6v6, everyone is alive, 5 men go here and they get the urn. Then what happens? Well, we kill someone. That's good. We got a kill. Now it's a 6v5, but they will get the urn. What do we do of this? The easiest call to make is to stay together and take something that is theirs. The fastest possible one option you have. So if you're 5 here, you're taking the Guardian, you're taking the Walker, you're taking this tier 3, you're taking this. And you do this with your team. If you start splitting and you put 2 people here, and you put 2 people here, and you put 1 person here, you're all gonna be too slow to do anything. So any 5-man split requires coordination. It can create a huge advantage. It can win you games when you're 20k behind because, well, this entire thing plus the kill that you got is almost 10k souls. So even if they get the urn, now you're 15% behind and not 25% behind anymore. But if you're slow, you're gonna die, you're not gonna get anything. They're gonna get an urn, they're gonna get objectives. They may just get another kill because they find some of you here when they're going back. And now they have mid-boss and now you lose the game. Even though I wanted to talk about space directly, we're not gonna be able to discuss the entire subject due to time limitations. It would take an entire other video and more concentration and more material. So what I'm gonna do instead is show you an example with what we discussed before. When the enemies know that you are somewhere and you can punish them in another place of the map, so when the enemies know that you're 2 people here, and they know that you can punish them if you come here, and they come here, then they realize that this is your space. The opposite should happen as well. If you see 2 enemies here, and you know that they can punish you if you come here, then that's their space. Whenever you are in their space or in your space, you should either be scared or relax and be punishing when they invade it. Why does this matter? And why should you take this example and use it for the rest of your game? Because especially when you're in a 1-2-3 or 1-1-4, the way you can get an advantage on the map is by identifying when that single person becomes inside of the enemy space. So let's say you're a carry Ivy, your team is here, and they realize that there is no one to help you. Well, now this is their space on the map. The Walker sometimes can protect you and there's scenarios where you're safe, but the reality is that now that you do not have anyone close to you, you have to play more carefully, you have to play more back, you can't push waves as much as you could. Now, if the enemies do not know that there's all the rest of the team is not here, then you can play more aggressively, you can make them think that there's someone close to you. Still, tread carefully. At last, if there's actually someone with you, and they do not know there's someone with you, you can show a mistake by playing aggressively or by playing in their jungle, make them react to you, and punish them for them being in your space. This is all the example I'm gonna give. The video about space would be 1,000,000 hours long, so try to use what I just told you to identify where can I, as a single player in a split which doesn't favor me as I'm not in the fight, get value. How do I not die, which would give value to the enemy team? And how do I make the enemy team think that I'm alone in the specific space? Stick with me, guys. We're almost done. I'm sorry if this is too complex or if I'm not being as easy to understand as I try to be usually. Again, if there's any problem, just let me know. We're gonna talk about 2 extreme scenarios and how to use map split and map positioning and the small concept about space I just gave you to fix them and maybe win a specific game. Let's say that, for example, you're in a situation like this. You're on mid lane, you're on Paradox and Pocket on mid lane. This is a competitive custom that was played on a European server, and you lose mid lane to Yamato and Mina. Now, what is gonna happen? From what we talked about before, you lost lane. Their job right now is to take your resources, and let me reduce the pen size. And while they will take your resources, they are holding up the lane pushed so that you cannot do anything about them. Let's now use the concept we just understood to try and find a solution. The enemy team will try to go for your jungle. They can either keep a 2-2-2 split, or you may not see the Mina anymore or the Yamato anymore, and they may be going to gank in some other lane. This creates 2 options. The first option, if you still see them here, is to have your Pocket get value on some other lane while you defend as much as possible. The second option, if you don't see the Mina anymore, is to use your Pocket to push the lane and keep the tower shoved. Now we create a third option. If you are good enough on your character, you feel confident, you believe you can get kills, you see the Yamato with low HP, you see the Mina not on the lane anymore, and the Yamato kind of feels in your space because the Mina is probably somewhere else, you may be able to punish the Yamato alone. There's a specific line that can be broken, which we're gonna talk about in the next video, between what is a good macro play and what is a good micro play. If the Yamato with no ultimate, with low HP, stays on the lane as the only person holding it, and you're good and you can hit all your cooldowns from Paradox, you can kill the Yamato. You can, as a -1k character, create space and get an objective on the map, steal from the enemies, stall the Yamato's growth, and make the rotation that the Mina did instantly countered by the other rotation that the Pocket does. Of course, the default option to just have 2 people push this lane and keep the enemies here tends to be the right one. It only is the right one, though, if you can actually defend your stuff, because if you just put 2 people here to clear the wave and get away because you cannot even get your jungle because they're gonna kill you in hit, something has to be done. You either have to call someone to get 3 people here and get an advantage from a lane which is winning and only needs 1 person to stay alive or that can stall for a while, or you need to find another solution to take their resources on some other part of the map. All in all, there's always ways to get some value when you're behind, but the most important one is to always do something that's a little bit unexpected from the enemy, and do it in a moment where you still have a possible advantage, because a 4.5k Paradox can kill a 5.4k Yamato. If this Yamato gets 2k more souls, and you don't get any souls because you keep dying, nothing is gonna change. And I specifically address this to carry players who keep trying to do these challenges and keep dying without using their cooldowns in the right manner. Paradox and Abrams, for example, are able to get these kills, Pocket as well. A carry player hardly is able to challenge a Yamato that's higher in souls than them. We will now tackle the last problem for the day, which is something that I have done and called out in many games recently, and that I feel has been a winning factor and a comeback factor many times. As I was mentioning before, the ability to not be afraid and actually play your character and expect your character to win fights is something which you need to win a game, even if you're ahead, but especially if you're behind. So let's explore the worst possible situation you can find yourself in. First off, you're -20% or more in soul gap. Second off, they have 3 rejuvenators. Third, but like not ignorable, they are mechanically been better than your team, or they have been winning more fights when there are 6 people. So they are just better. Let's just say it straight up. This should be a loss. So the stuff you have to do is not conventional and is not necessarily reasonable, but understanding that you can do this will win you a % of those lost games. We can work with the 6-0-0 split. How does this work? When the enemies have Rejuvenator, mostly their job is to get Urn, get your resources, get your Walkers, do all of this while not dying, because especially in the current gun meta, it's very easy to go in your base, get your Patreon, and die in pit with 9 lives total to just end your game. So your job is to sort of trim down the amount of Rejuvenators they have so they just win. And you have more comeback turns, you have more comeback creeps, there's more mechanics that can help you win the game. How do you make that happen? You do something absolutely crazy. And the best places to do something absolutely crazy is where the enemies are not supposed to be playing. What does this mean? The default play is when the enemies get the urn, because they will get the urn, whether it's yours on side, whether it's here. If you're in base, which mostly happens and often happens when you're behind with rejuvs, you decide to look for enemies getting your resources on this side of the map. How do you do that? You do it in the fastest and safest way possible, because there may not be just one person. They can just allocate one person to the urn and have the rest of the team push here. So what you do is you wait for someone to be in a risky position. The best option would be to have a scout, such as a Calico or a Haste, which can identify if the person is actually alone. Sometimes you don't have that, so you just have to assume. You assume this person is alone or with max one person, and you 6-man jump him. Let me make this more clear with better pencils. you 6-man jump the person and get one of their rejuvs off. Your best bet is if that person has a friend with him and you're fighting a 6v2. I'm not gonna talk about how to fight this 6v2. Very simply, you just have to call out who you're shooting and have 6 people shooting the same person and using cooldowns on the same person. You have to kill them fast, execute them 2 times, get the rejuvs out. If you can execute them again, just get the rejuvs out and go back to base. And now the enemies are playing with -2 rejuvs and they can only get your patron. Best case scenario is you find 3 people, you kill 3 people, you get the rejuvs out, and now they're stuck getting an urn with no rejuv, with 3 people down, and you can get their walker, you can get their resources, and come back in souls. Trust me, this is not an exaggerated play, as much as you may think. Go watch the next Deadlock Night Shift, and try to see teams that are behind, which has happened a bunch of times in the previous games, come back by taking an ultra-aggressive, overnumbered fight and that bowling on someone. This was it. This is all I wanted to talk about today, except for a new thing that I made, thanks to Lightbringer and the Deadlock API, which I'm going to show you right now. But basically, I created a way to see all the Deadlock stats directly from the Deadlock API. I still have to introduce some new variables, but you can explore the website. It's going to be linked down below. This refers to the gun DPS. So let me show you, for example, let's lock the heroes and let's look for the gun DPS. We could look here with the managed columns. Like I can do this. Max gun DPS spin plus spirit. We pin this left and we sort by this. And boom, now you have a list of the highest max gun DPS with all boons and spin up, which is just the mechanic that Meganis and Victor have to go through to get their max fire rate, and the spirit scaling, which for Warden and Vindicta and Talon increases their gun damage or their fire rate. And this is a very easy way to identify new metas and identify builds that you can make. I've been suggesting Gun Calico for a while, even though of course it's not really the best build. But Gun Pocket has been popping off because Lightbringer was suggesting it. Gun Meganis is of course crazy good. Viper sadly is not as strong as it should be because his fall-off range is too bad to the way he wants to play. But Gun Warden has been working well. Gun Victor is not that bad. Gun Abrams has been popping off. And you can sort of identify new metas from here. Another important stat you can check for is, for example, the base bullet damage. We're going to talk about the max bullet damage. But you can again see metas. Gun Holiday, Gun Dorman, Gun Page, Gun Talon. Gun Geist, Drifter has its own positions, but then you still see the gun predominating characters. If you care more about Spirit, you're an ability man. You can look up every ability and you can compare their burst and their scaling during the game. So for example, we can compare, let's say Lash, the Ground Strike, we had Talon, Charge Shot. How do they compare? We're gonna look at both levels, so level 0 and max level, because Talon gets more damage, gets more scaling as the game goes on. And you can see that the burst is pretty comparable, and the more spirit, the more they become similar. You have to remember that Lash Slam needs a specific height to work and has more cooldown, it doesn't have charges. So if you want to check something else, for example, you can check the burst per minute. And now, well, they're much more similar. Or you can check up here the max health of some characters. How does it scale? You can check the gun DPS comparatively during the game. Some people have more damage early on, some people have more damage later on. You can check the gun damage per shot. If we select all, we see the table that we've shown before, but you can see that this table doesn't work as it should. Because the more the game goes on, the more some characters like Page, which starts off with the highest gun damage per shot, becomes a bit lower than the other two better scaling characters, which are Dorman and Holiday. And yeah, this is here. I hope you like it. If you have any problems or complaints, just contact me. Another huge shout out to Lightbringer for first making a table like this and giving me the inspiration. And a huge shout out to the Deadlock API team for making this even just remotely possible. Thank you for watching this enormous video. I hope it was something different. I hope you liked the format. Of course, it was much less effort than the usual video I do. It took not a couple of months to make, but rather some days. I don't really like putting information out there in a manner like this because I feel like it's a bit harder to digest and it can take away more time that you need. But I would have not put it out otherwise, so I felt this was still a pretty decent option. I've been streaming sometimes on Twitch. You may want to check me out. I will do some VOD reviews there, just some analysis to get some new ideas about the game and some also pro gameplay analysis just to watch what people do and try to learn from that. But thank you as always for the support, and I hope we'll see us again soon. Bye bye.